At 42, I had grown accustomed to the quiet ache that shadowed my daily life. Married for over 20 years to a man who had grown distant and unresponsive, I often felt the weight of loneliness despite our shared home. My husband, Andrew, was a reserved man, absorbed in his work and lost in his own silent world, leaving me to navigate the emptiness that slowly crept into our marriage. Before we start, thank you for coming to my channel. Your participation is my happiness. Let me know where you are and what time it is now. Okay, now let's get into the story. I found solace in my work as a nurse at Mercy General Hospital, where caring for others offered a temporary reprieve from my personal heartache. One chilly evening during my routine rounds in the recovery ward, I met Michael, a gentle man in his late 50s recovering from a heart procedure. His eyes, soft and kind, carried a spark of life that contrasted so starkly with the cold indifference I faced at home. As I adjusted his blanket and carefully checked his vitals, our eyes met in a moment that seemed to pause time. There was an unspoken understanding in that glance, a tender invitation to feel valued and seen. Michael's sincere, quiet words, delivered with a warmth that reached deep into my weary heart, stirred something I thought had long been buried under years of neglect. That brief encounter left an indelible mark on me. As I left his room that night, the memory of his gentle smile and the genuine compassion in his eyes lingered like a soft glow in the darkness. In that sterile hospital corridor, I experienced a flicker of hope, a promise that perhaps, even in the midst of personal solitude, there could be moments of unexpected connection. Unbeknownst to me, this fateful meeting would set me on a journey toward rediscovering a passion for life that had been dormant for too long. A journey that might ultimately challenge everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the yearning for true intimacy. In the days following our fateful first meeting, my rounds seemed to lead me, almost by fate, to Michael's room again and again. Each visit, under the guise of routine care, gradually unraveled the walls we had both built around our hearts. Amid the steady beep of monitors and the soft hum of hospital machinery, our conversations deepened. Michael's gentle words and quiet gratitude became a beacon in my otherwise lonely days at home. One particularly quiet afternoon, when the ward had settled into a serene lull, I found myself lingering by Michael's bedside. His recovery had reached a fragile plateau, and exhaustion kept him from the usual restlessness. As I adjusted his blanket and checked his vitals, our eyes met, a look that conveyed unspoken understanding and an invitation to share more than just clinical pleasantries. Before I could think twice, Michael reached out, his hand trembling as it gently clasped mine. In that tender moment, the sterile confines of the hospital room faded into the background, replaced by a soft intimacy that felt both healing and profoundly real. I leaned in slowly, and our lips met in a soft, hesitant kiss, an act that spoke of longing and solace, a brief escape from the loneliness that had marked my life for far too long. As the afternoon light dimmed into the gentle glow of early evening, we remained together in quiet reverie. With the world outside momentarily forgotten, our whispered words and the warmth of our entwined hands filled the space with a fragile promise of connection. That day, in the quiet sanctuary of the hospital room, I discovered that even amidst duty and pain, a spark of tenderness could bloom, offering hope in the form of a shared, healing embrace. Thank you for listening to the story so far. Your encouragement means a lot to me. Please comment and share your thoughts here. I love you and I am so grateful to have you on this journey with me to explore the story further. In the quiet lull of the late afternoon shift, the sterile hospital room became our private sanctuary. Michael's steady breathing and the soft hum of medical equipment faded into the background as our connection deepened. With gentle tenderness, I leaned closer, and Michael's hand found the small of my back. His warm embrace was a balm to the loneliness that had haunted me for so long. In that vulnerable space, our lips met in a soft, lingering kiss, one that spoke of comfort, longing, and the forbidden promise of a connection that transcended the walls of duty. For a few stolen moments, we allowed ourselves to revel in the intimacy that had quietly bloomed between us. I could feel the surge of emotions with every caress as his fingers lightly traced along my arm, sending shivers through my skin. Wrapped in the softness of his embrace, we exchanged whispered words and shared a tenderness that felt both healing and dangerously real. In that sacred corner of the hospital, our hearts dared to dream of warmth and belonging. Yet, amid the gentle cadence of our clandestine interlude, fate took an unexpected turn. As we embraced near the open doorway of the recovery room, a passing colleague, a fellow nurse named Karen, glanced into the room. Her eyes widened at the sight of our entwined figures, and a look of shock quickly crossed her face. I froze, the intensity of our moment shattered by the sudden intrusion. Before I could pull away, Karen hurriedly left the room, her hurried steps echoing in the sterile corridor. Moments later, I heard hushed voices and the unmistakable sound of a phone conversation. My heart sank as I realized that our intimate moment had not remained a secret. Unbeknownst to me, Karen had already informed Andrew, my husband, about what she had witnessed. In that instant, the fragile sanctuary we had created dissolved into uncertainty and dread. The warmth of Michael's touch now mingled with a bitter chill, as I grappled with the realization that our passionate secret was on the brink of exposure. The boundaries between care and betrayal, intimacy and infidelity, blurred in that charged moment, leaving me with a profound sense of vulnerability and fear. As I sat alone in the quiet aftermath, the weight of what had just transpired pressed heavily upon me. I knew that the next steps would force me to confront not only the consequences of our forbidden passion, but also the deeper truths about the loneliness that had driven me to seek solace beyond the familiar. The afternoon light that once offered solace now felt harsh and unyielding. I had barely managed to escape the sterile confines of Michael's room, when the quiet storm of consequences began to swirl around me. My colleague Karen, the very one whose eyes had witnessed our forbidden embrace, had already reached out to my husband, Andrew. The weight of her words, now echoing in the corridors of my mind, left me trembling with dread. That evening, as I prepared for my shift, my phone rang. Andrew's voice on the line was strained, tinged with hurt and disbelief. "We need to talk," he said, his tone both cold and commanding. Every syllable felt like a shard of ice, reinforcing the reality that my carefully concealed secret was now laid bare. I could only muster a weak apology as we arranged to meet at a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria after my shift ended. When I saw him, Andrew's face was a mask of sorrow and anger. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken accusations, and I felt my heart contract in response to the disappointment I saw there. "Why, Evelyn?" Andrew's voice cracked, echoing the betrayal that now stained our shared years. "I thought we were partners. I never imagined you'd find comfort in someone else, especially here, where trust should be sacred." Tears blurred my vision as I tried to explain. The loneliness that had grown in the shadows of our cold marriage, the gentle warmth that Michael's kindness had stirred in me when I felt utterly invisible. I pleaded for him to understand that this wasn't about undermining our vows, but rather an aching cry for connection in a life that had become painfully isolated. Yet, his gaze remained hard. "You're my wife, Evelyn. I've seen you hurt, and I thought I could be there for you. But this is something I never expected. It's not just about the intimacy in that room. It's about the secrets, the lies." I tried to reach for his hand, to offer a tender touch that might mend the rift, but he recoiled as if the physical contact was a reminder of the betrayal. In that moment, I realized that the consequences of that fleeting intimacy extended far beyond the hospital room. They had cracked the very foundation of our marriage. The conversation spiraled into a painful confrontation. Andrew's words, though laced with sorrow, were resolute. "I need time to process this, Evelyn. I need to know if I can trust you again." His eyes, filled with hurt, searched mine for remnants of the woman I once was, the one he thought he married. As I walked away that night, the corridors of the hospital and the echo of his parting words followed me. The intimacy I had found in that stolen moment now felt like a dagger in my heart, a bittersweet reminder of both the solace and the betrayal it had brought. In the solitude of my room, with the hum of distant monitors as my only company, I realized that the path ahead would demand a reckoning with the choices I had made. A journey toward forgiveness, healing, or perhaps the painful acceptance of a love lost in the shadows of betrayal. After that painful confrontation, the echoes of Andrew's words haunted me like a relentless refrain. I found myself wandering the quiet halls of the hospital long after my shift had ended, the sterile lights and distant beeps of monitors mirroring the numb isolation that now consumed me. Every step I took was a stark reminder of the promises I had broken, and the deep loneliness that had driven me to seek solace where I shouldn't have. Back at home, my small apartment felt overwhelmingly empty. I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee and the blank pages of an old journal. The intimacy I once shared with Michael, a tender kiss, the warmth of his hand on my back, now mingled with a bitter sense of regret. What had begun as a desperate search for connection had spiraled into a betrayal that threatened to shatter the very foundation of my marriage. In the silence of that night, I tried to reach out to a friend, someone who had always offered compassionate advice. But even their words, meant to comfort and guide, fell short of soothing the storm within me. The gentle moments I had stolen in the hospital room were now tainted by guilt, leaving me questioning whether they had been a fleeting escape from a painful reality, or the desperate cry of a heart yearning for love. Determined to understand the wreckage of my emotions, I began writing down every thought and feeling in my journal, each word a tentative step toward piecing together the woman I once was and the person I needed to become. With every stroke of the pen, I relived that charged evening, the coldness in Andrew's eyes, and the fragile intimacy that had briefly lit up my dark world. As I looked out at the city's night skyline from my window, I wondered if there could ever be a dawn bright enough to wash away the shadows of my mistakes. The road ahead promised to be long and fraught with difficult decisions, but beneath the weight of regret lay a small ember of hope, a chance, perhaps, to rebuild and rediscover the true meaning of love and trust. That night, as I drifted into a restless sleep, I knew one thing for certain. The consequences of my choices had irrevocably changed my world, and now I had to find a way to heal the fractures in my heart, even if it meant confronting the darkest parts of my soul. In the weeks following the painful unraveling of my once secret passion, the weight of regret became too heavy to bear. Every day at the hospital reminded me of the choices I had made, the tender yet forbidden moments that shattered the fragile peace of my marriage and the life I once knew. Andrew's cold silence and the echo of his disappointed eyes became a constant reminder of the betrayal that now defined our home. One morning, as I stood before the mirror in my modest apartment, I realized that I had to reclaim my life. The reflection staring back was not the woman I once envisioned, a caregiver devoted to her patients and a wife clinging to a fading spark, but someone lost in guilt and sorrow. With a heavy heart yet a newfound determination, I handed in my resignation at Mercy General Hospital. I knew that leaving behind the place where my professional life had intertwined with my personal mistakes was the first step toward redemption. The decision was not made lightly. I sat down with Andrew one quiet evening, the room heavy with the silence of unspoken apologies. I explained that I could no longer live in the shadow of my past, that my heart needed a chance to heal away from the ghosts of our broken vows. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded for understanding, but I could only see the reflection of my own remorse in his eyes. With every word, I felt the resolve to break free, even though it meant leaving behind the life we had built together. That night, after packing a small bag and leaving a note that spoke of both regret and hope, I stepped out into the cool darkness. I didn't know exactly where I was headed, only that I needed to find a place far away, somewhere the echoes of my mistakes could not follow. I boarded a bus to a distant city, a place where no one knew my name or my past, and where I could finally begin to rebuild the fragments of my identity. As the bus rolled into the unknown, I gazed out the window at the blur of city lights fading into the distance. The journey ahead was uncertain and laden with both pain and promise. Yet, deep within me, I felt a quiet liberation, an invitation to rediscover who I truly was, free from the confines of regret and the chains of a love that had long since lost its warmth. In that solitary moment, as the world outside transformed into a tapestry of new beginnings, I vowed to embrace every step of this journey toward healing. My heart, though scarred, was ready to be reborn, ready to learn that sometimes, the bravest act is to leave the past behind and forge a new path toward redemption. And that's it for today's story. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and share your feelings. Did you relate to any of the characters? Or if you were in their shoes, what decisions would you make? I'd love to hear from all of you. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, hit one. Subscribe so you don't miss out on more great content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.